Since before recorded history, the people of Britain have had first-hand experience of the strange and unusual. Spirits who haunt ancient castles, stories of werewolves and banshees roaming the countryside, and fantastic creatures like gnomes, fairies and pixies, all firmly embedded in our native folklore. This cultural experience makes us uniquely qualified to research these types of phenomena and help us find the truth of the reality that surrounds us. So sit back and relax as your hosts, Irene Allen Block and Mark Johnson, take you on a journey through this strange realm and together help us find the answers to the mysteries that lie just beyond our grasp. Welcome to Paranormal UK Radio.
Welcome to the Paranormal UK Radio Show, the flagship show on the Paranormal UK Radio Network. And before Mark laughs at me, that is a real tongue twister. Okay. I'm your host, Irene Allen Block, and with me tonight are two of my co-hosts, Andy Mercer and Mark Johnson.
I noticed. Good evening. I noticed I was put last tonight.
Well, you're always first. So there, I've changed it around.
Okay. Well,
how are you boys?
Doing good. Getting over a bad cold, but otherwise, I'll be muting a lot tonight, so I'm not hacking in everybody's ear. But otherwise, feeling better.
I'm doing fine, actually. I'm pretty good. I've just come back from a little weekend away in my favourite town of Glastonbury in Somerset and came back with quite a few books as usual. Two of the best bookshops in the country are located in that rather nice little town. So I'm doing pretty good.
Yeah, Glastonbury is absolutely beautiful, isn't it?
Absolutely. It's not the town it used to be. It's kind of a bit commercial now, but as I say, there's two very good second-hand bookshops, both dedicated to the esoteric, my field. Yeah. So I usually end up coming back with usually armfuls of books or several £100s spent. So and as usual.
What was it this time? Several £100s spent again, Andy?
Yeah, I must admit about £250. One book in particular. Well, I collect. I do collect, but a lot of the books I buy tend to be old and rare. So they are investments. One of the best investments you can actually make at the moment financially is in rare books. They do maintain and grow in value quite quickly, and you'll be surprised. I mean, I've had my collection appraised at around about £10,000 worth. So, and it's not vast. It's not like a huge collection, but I've got some pretty rare stuff. So I do end up spending a few. Could always save up a few pounds to head up over there, and usually end up bringing back half a suitcase full of it. It was actually quite light this time. I've only bought about a dozen, and one of them's 120 quid, but that's because I was really wanted it. So, but yeah, so I'm quite happy.
So, have you got a library, Andy?
I'd say so. Yeah, I'll probably
an actual library room.
Well, more or less, my office, as I'm sitting at the moment, where I work as a therapist, half of it is the therapy, and the other half is basically 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8 bookcases. So yes,
8 bookcases. Bookcases.
Yes.
Wow. You've got a lot of books.
A little sad, but there you go. But no, it's always been an interest of mine as I collect the esoteric stuff. So all sorts of books on magic and witchcraft, all that kind of stuff. So.
And I bet you haven't got my book, have you, Andy? Psychic Spy.
Well, might have. You never know. It might be lurking around here somewhere.
Buried somewhere in there. Those 8 million books.
Propping up a table.
No. All books are looked after with great care. So.
Oh. Well, it is antiquated, my book. You know that, don't you?
Well, sure it is, absolutely.
Yeah.
Old and valuable. Yeah.
Very old and valuable.
She talking about the book or herself?
Yeah. The book or the person?
Yeah, I'll agree with half of that.
Oh, yeah. All right, you boys.
I'm going to be in so much trouble. Anyway.
You are in so much trouble, and so is Andy. I believe Andy gave you the cold, Mark, and now you've given it to me.
That's right. You were sick last time, Andy. It's your fault.
Yeah, absolutely dreadful. Obviously, there's this strange demon cold that goes down the old firm Skype line. It must be the demon Skype monster that creates it and sends it out to all of us.
Well, it has to be because,
it went out from you to America, and now it's come back over the Atlantic to me.
See, so he's bounced back over to America now, so our guest better take care.
Yeah. Remember, everything over here in America is demons these days, too, so, I wouldn't doubt it. Well, why
You're
don't we
clearly
go ahead
possessed, Mark.
why don't we go ahead and introduce our guest, because we have a great show lined up for tonight. We are speaking with William Whitecrow. Now, William is based on his bio here, we've got a lot of cram in here. A shaman, a paranormal investigator, UFO abductee, secret program seer, healer, author, and radio show host. He has a couple of books out, The Earth Time Chronicles, and also Are You Tired of Living a Toxic Life? And he's here to talk to us on a variety of subjects. So, William, thank you for coming on the program.
You bet. It's a pleasure to be here.
William, you've been a busy boy.
Well, at 63, you can put a lot of life in that short period of time, so, and I was one of the people that truly believe you only have so many heartbeats, so you better use them wisely and as often as you can. Yeah. So that's what I've been doing a lot of writing lately,
Well, at this point, let's figure out where we want to start, because there's so many topics that we want to talk with you about tonight. Everything from, of course, the UFO and paranormal experiences, but also the shamanism, because that's something that I've had a personal hand in lately. So I'd like to talk with you more about that. But can you just tell us a little background, a little bio on you coming up and what got you involved in some of these experiences?
Well, basically everything started when I was a young kid. I was lived with a lot of different relatives. In the beginning, we settled on the Indian reservation and everything. And from that point on, they like to put the Indians way out in the middle of nowhere. Well, that's a problem, because as soon as you do that, you start noticing things around you, especially as a young kid. You're inquisitive. You want to know everything. And I started going to lodges and native ceremonies and powwows and all kinds of stuff of this nature when I was very, very young. And I started understanding a lot more about spirit and about the human being, and I could see the changes happening in the planet. And not only that, I listened to the elders always talk about the others, and those are brothers and sisters, shall we say, which is not the good experience that a lot of people have out there, but there's good and bad and everything. But when I was young, I started having experiences myself with spiritual nature and UFO nature. And then in March Air Force Base, just outside March Air Force Base, which when I was young was the atomic wing of the West Coast, I had some abduction experiences. And I didn't tell my dad until about 2 weeks before he passed away. And I could tell when I told him, I said, Dad, I've had some experiences when I was young. I just could never tell you. And I told him, and he turned the look on his face, and he just, why didn't you tell me? Well, I found out also that my grandfather had this same thing happen to him. Then now all of a sudden my dad's reactions told me he had experience, so it's kind of generational. But I really wanted to be a Shaolin monk, to be honest with you, when I was a kid. And because I don't know, I like the peace, the meditation, the control of the body, the mind. So I got into martial arts quite heavily for pretty much all my life. And then I went into the service after I left the Indian reservation and things of that nature. And of course, was a wild young man for a period of time. Went out and got in trouble just like everybody else, And especially when you leave the res and go into the city and stuff and don't know all the customs, shall we say. And so I turned around, and as time grew, I got married, had grandkids, had my kids and then had grandkids. But I also started noticing that they were having interesting experiences too, with the spiritual aspect and the supernatural and the UFO activity. We actually had, my daughter was in the back of our truck with a friend one day. We had a craft fly right over the top of us, a big one, larger than a semi-truck, and head off to Rainbow Lake area and just disappear within 5 seconds from our sight, all the way out of sight into the sky. So I went to Vietnam and everything, and I came back, and I just really I needed to heal myself. I spent 2 years in the mountains without talking to anybody, in a kind of a base camp up on around Mount Rainier, where a lot of us stayed when we first came back from Vietnam. We weren't ready for the world, as we called it, yet. And so when I finally came out and everything, got married and all this type of stuff, I decided it's time to help other people. And the best way to help myself was to help other people heal. So I went back to my shaman roots, other thing I was taught. And, you can run away from things for so long, but, everything comes full circle. And you have to face those things, and you have to make a choice in your life. And that's when I decided full-time shamanism and helping people. And then I went and got my degree in psychology, and my last psychology, a 2-year program. I graduated with the highest honors and stuff. So then I was in suicide counseling and suicide prevention and family crisis intervention. So the field of psychology and the human I know very well. But I also noticed a different part of me, too, as not through the shamanic experiences, well, through them also, but through my contact with these others over a lifetime, that I could sense things, know things, feel things more. Didn't feel really a normal part of society. But the fact is, you have to learn to live within it. And I did through my practices and meditations and understanding who and what I was, as well as what humanity is and where we're heading. So that's kind of my life story right there. And I've got 10 grandkids, and things like that. So we got a large family, and all of them look and see things the way I do. They understand the truth and of what's really going on, and where we really came from and where we're heading. It's a good thing all the way around.
I want to mention, before we get into the more paranormal stuff, I'd like to touch on the shamanism aspect, since you just focused on it so clearly, because that's something that's really affecting me, especially within the last year. Now, I've always been, for the last 20 years, I've always been attracted more towards Native American style with spiritualism and spirituality, just from, most of the shamanistic practices. It's not just related to just one culture, but to more of the indigenous cultures all around the world. Now, this last year,
True.
I've actually been taking taking classes on being a shamanic practitioner, and just completed this course over this last year. So learning on doing extractions, soul retrievals and such. And it's really powerful. I don't claim to be the greatest journeyer, to be honest. When you journey through shamanism, I don't get a lot of strong visuals. Instead, what I get is more of a knowing. And in some of the healings that I've done so far, I slip into what I call the zone, in connection with, the higher guides. Even though I don't really see them, I feel that connection, and I'm able to do some work with people. And the feedback I've gotten so far from the people I've been working on has been very positive. So it's a good feeling to know, to be able to help somebody in those cases.
Mm-hmm. Very much so. I think the world needs more shamans, and I keep telling people that, part of the reason I wrote Are You Tired of Living a Toxic Life? And in the second book to that series, I'm writing 3 of them, called The Healing, is because people need to learn to get back in touch with themselves, as I call their inner shaman themselves. Everybody has abilities to one extent or another. The only reason we don't have the abilities we see on a lot of these shows is because we just don't use them all the time. They lay dormant because we're too busy working 9 to 5 and worrying about the kids and the parent-teacher meetings and, and the shootings down the street in Iraq and Iran and North Korea. Back in the day when I was growing up, we had time to be in the caves, go through the ceremonies, to see the illnesses of mankind, and that's what they are. We fail to recognize who and what we are and understand what our power is and what we can do within our lives. Most people kind of mediocre and run along in their life and everything and hope for the best. But there are those who harness their own individual abilities and powers, and they thrive in this life instead of just survive. And see, that's the most important thing about shamanism. We can heal and we go out and do all the normal things. And I really like what you said, Mark, about other cultures, because Aboriginal peoples all across this planet, it's funny how they all kind of go to a central hub of understanding and balance, no matter where they are, Africa, Asia, Australia, anywhere, United States, Central South America. They all try to teach a balance in this harmony with living with this planet and everything. And as you know, we're so out of balance right now that this world really needs, everybody needs to really look at the shaman with themselves, because once you do that, you understand, and I think you'll understand this here, Mark, you learn to become the observer, where you don't put a ton of emotion into watching and, oh my gosh, you step back and say, ooh, these things are happening. We do feel bad about them, but I still have to live in this world that I'm in right now and do what I'm doing. I say I'm a highly spiritual individual, but I'm a realist too. We have to see that. I'm a little bit different. I've had near-death experiences too, so when the spirit comes to me, I see visual things. I can be out in the yard, and I'll sit there and be doing something, and I'll stop. And for 5 or 10 minutes, I can be in 110-degree sun, and I'll just phase out. And you call it, in the flow and everything, but that's what it is. We're connecting with that source, that understanding of what we are. And that's our higher self. A lot of people don't understand that. And by doing that, you can become one heck of a shaman.
Well, Andy, I know you texted me on that. Why don't you go ahead and ask that question? Because I can answer it, part of it, but I'd like to let William hear your question and let him answer it from his perspective.
Yeah, sure. It's just a thought that occurred to me. How do you define a shaman? It's one of those terms that's used quite often by different cultures, and they have slightly different ideas. I know it's very much getting down to the sort of the roots of things, but how would you define a shaman, William?
I'm glad you said that, because everything is just a label. A label tells you approximately what somebody or something does, like a jet engine or a jet. Basically a medicine man, a medicine woman, a shaman, brujos, things that other shaman individuals from Central and South America. Basically, what this boils down to is what our perspective of life is, our connection, and how we teach others to get that same connection so they can do the same things as, like, I used to dream of being a Shaolin monk. I knew herbs and all this. So basically, being a shaman, you're a study of arcane knowledge. You study the world around you. You try to find a balance. And really, shamanism is search for the self and the individual's connection with the world and universe and everything around them, society, everything. So I said this on many radio shows, and when I didn't even consider myself a shaman until those who were teaching me says, "Well, you're a shaman. Go out and do this teaching." I'm going, "What?" To me, it was just a great learning experience and everything, and I was able to help a ton of people, and there was no label to it when I was growing up. You just had the abilities. You were trained to do these certain things that could help yourself and mankind and continue to serve. So
William,
go ahead.
William, sorry. It also comes from within you, doesn't it?
Yes, everything comes from within.
It's inside you.
It isn't from out.
Yeah.
Yeah, and that's the key. So the term shaman, medicine man, medicine woman, shaman, the different terminologies that people just use, and it really just depends on your culture. Because the word shaman comes from Mongolia, and these teachers that came over here and taught me, Siberia region, all that, and taught me, I've been taught by yogis, I've been taught by the medicine men and women of the Americas here, the native tribes, Central South American people, several from Mongolia. So I have a well-rounded knowledge of different cultures, and that was what they told me what I was. And I really never used that term myself for like 7 or 8 years until other people, it was just what I was. That's what they call me. So it's just basically a label of an individual that has really taken things to the deepest possible level and interacted with these forces, these sources. And I tell you, when I died and came back, this happened to me 2 times. The last time was in front of my family, 24,000 volts, 350 amps, killed me dead. When I came back, my understanding of what a true shaman was totally different. Abilities and everything just surpassed anything I ever thought of in my life. And so it's been on a constant path of researching everything I can, because I'm going to tell you, people, everything you learn in this existence goes with you. I mean, it's with you 100% on the other side, period. More real than real.
Well, Andy, let me just ask this real quick. I was just going to mention with shamanism is it seems like the Aboriginal peoples all across the world who practice shamanism, it's so much different than when people when organized religion comes along and starts throwing in dogma and controlling people. And again, I'm not trying to bash anybody's faith here. It's just that it's just a reality where the indigenous cultures and view of spirituality was a very personal experience between the individual and the spiritual forces. And the shaman could act as that link to connect between the forces and for healings and whatnot. And it wasn't until later where the organized churches, and I'm even going back to like organized religion thousands of years ago, Sumerians, Egyptians, everything becomes so set and dogmatic that the power is kind of taken away from the people, from that individual spiritual connection with whatever these spiritual forces are, God, the creator, you name it.
What is it to you? What is it to you? That's the question. I tell you a real quick experience. When I was young and everything, I was going through the lodge, and I was going on my second vision quest, my first vision quest, actually. And I'm sitting in the middle of the mountains. Here it is, spring is there, beautiful time of year, and nights still get cool and everything. And I come down from the mountain, and I'm just, what am I supposed to see? And my elder looked at me like, you stupid boy, he goes, it's your journey, not mine, So, I learned right then and there, that there's many paths to the top of the mountain. The key is basically what we're trying to do is help people understand who, what they are, grow, become a better person, understand how to interact with these other forces and things that are, we don't pay attention to this other side of us. I don't look at the separation of being in this third dimensional world here, working with people in society and everything, in the spirit world. There's no difference to me. It's all the same. And when you get to that point, then you understand the smoke and mirrors and all the dogma, exactly what you were talking about, Mark, because shamanism frees you. There is no dogma.
Yes, it is. That's very much, isn't it? You get really down to the root, to the core of experiences, rather than having someone give you a set of rules and defining how you're supposed to experience this thing, what it's supposed to mean. It's what it means to you, and it's that sense of core, really getting that direct connection. Yeah, absolutely. I definitely agree with you there.
Yeah, definitely, 100%.
So with your path, now you mentioned two things we have to ask about them, is your two near-death experiences. Now, you got electrocuted. What were you doing that got you electrocuted?
Well, I was depending on a friend. No,
Oops.
I had a friend with me and everything. And this is a good friend, a real good friend. He's a black gentleman and everything, and we call him our original black light now. And we joke about this all the time, because he got electrocuted with me, but he was letting go. I wasn't. I didn't even see what was happening. But right there with my family, my last one was I was in my yard and we were putting up a CB antenna. So I'm bent over and I got a hold of the pole with one hand and I got a wrench in the other hand tightening the bolt to this. It's a 6x6 in the ground, and it's well grounded, and I have a swamp cooler, so I'm standing in water, and he's supposed to be watching this 40-foot antenna we're putting up, and he decided to take a look at me, and it touched two 12,000 volt high voltage, high tension power lines. So I ended up with, they said, 24,000 volts, 350 amps. It took me out. I watched the wrench in my hand totally disintegrate. Next thing I knew, my hands were all pulled up. I watched the ground. I hit the ground. I watched the ground where the water was bubble around me because the juice is so intense. And I just yelled, and that was the end of it. Next thing I knew, I was above the telephone power lines looking down, and I seen my son, because I told him, I says, if you ever see fire, go jump in water, get away from it. So he went and jumped in this little swimming pool we had, and he sat there and he was watching me as I was going through this, and I was on fire. Blew out my knees, my toes, my fingertips, fried me pretty good. Anywhere I had hair, yes, anywhere I had hair, I was smoking from everything. And my wife come running out. I watched all this from above the telephone pole. And I was worried. I was panicking, even though I wasn't no longer in my body, and I knew that because of my training, as a shaman. I knew where I was. This was no guessing game. And my wife ran out there and grabbed me and pulled me away from the area. And about 10 minutes later or so, in between 5-10 minutes later, she's telling me it's not your time. It's not all this time. You know what I mean? And all the neighborhoods around me, I took the entire power of the town of Volta, California. There was about 30 buildings and structures and stuff next to a railroad track and stuff in Volta, California. And so I was right there. It was like, everything will be okay. Something told me. They didn't tell me. I just knew it. It was like they talked to my mind and my heart. And I said, okay. And I was gone. And I was in another realm. And that realm, I was standing. I know a lot of people have their experiences. It was brighter. I had no tunnel, none of this. I was standing in another world. And there's a red-brown clay kind of color that we have on the reservation. If you get stuck in this red clay, you're buried there till spring, But anyway, it's that red color clay on the left-hand side of me. And that sand, though, it's crystalline sand, that red color, with 3 hills behind it. 3 beans, one on each hill, with a tree on each hill that was kind of bent over like in a strip of its leaves, like it was just in a massive windstorm. Now, right between my legs, there was a perfect line of this white crystalline sand that went right down to this beach with lapping water and the diamonds in the water. You've seen it in your mind. You close your mind, you can see it now. The sun out there and the diamonds on the water and everything. Crystal clear water. Down the beach, I could tell. And this line went right down the beach, perfectly separating these 2 sands. And I was standing on each side. So I had a choice in what direction I wanted to go. So I'll just make this real quick. I decided to go down to the water, and next thing I knew, I think I'm walking down the water, and I realize that I'm just floating to the water's edge, and I look back. This is when I know I'm still kind of connected, my spirit is understanding that I just left my body, but my mind is still going through that transition. And I seen steps leading down to the water, but I had no feet. I was floating. So I instantly knew, okay, I'm here. And I went out over the water. But anyway, I heard this voice. It goes on for another 20 minutes, but we don't have that time. So I turned around and heard this voice, "It's not your time yet. Come back. It's not your time." And I kept going forward to this island out there because everything out there was, nice, beautiful. So I hear this voice and everything, and there's a dark, deeper voice. It was more of a masculine type, deep voice, Told me, "It's not your time. You have to come back." So I went backwards, exactly, just like a replay, to where I was standing on the beach, back up the beach, and footprints disappeared. I turned sideways, boom, I'm standing with my one leg in the crystal clear, beautiful white sand, the other leg in the other colored sand with the 3 hills, and I could have went the other direction. I know, either way, it's still then. And then I said, okay, I'm ready, and I had this feeling of falling, like from the entire Empire State Building backwards. And then, whoo, I woke up, and I'm in my wife's arms, and she's sitting there petting my head going, "It's not your time yet.
Uh-huh.
Gotta come back." So that was my second experience.
Wow.
That's powerful.
So
that is.
It's what's funny here. I this entire time telling you, my eyes are closed. I'm going through that experience in my head again, and the connections I have with the other side are intense. Yeah, that's the best way to put it.
That's phenomenal. Wow. We're a little gobsmacked here.
Yes.
The voices that you hear, you kept hearing the one voice. Was that before the deep voice cut in, was that your wife's voice you were hearing telling you it's not your time? Or that was another voice telling you?
It was something else. No, I know her voice, and it was just like, I don't know who it was. The deeper voice was more powerful, like one in charge saying no, because I wanted to keep going. And at that point, I didn't have a choice.
You were clinically, were you technically dead? Did you ever stop breathing according to her? And how long?
No heartbeat, no nothing.
For how long?
5 to 10 minutes.
And see, normally the brain asphyxiates and is beyond is beyond help when you get past 4 minutes. So the fact that you went several minutes with no oxygen and still came out of it and are fine is a miracle in itself.
Oh yeah, that's what the doctor said. The sheriff, when he drove up, I'm sorry I'm laughing here, but now I look back, hindsight's always 20/20, and I'm laughing. But I forced myself up. Everybody tried to hold me down, and I told him, "You let me up or we're going to fight," So I went in the house, and I got a gallon of water and downed it, and another thing, and actually I was smoking pot at the time, and I took a hooter and I smoked it too, because I could feel my body going shock, hot, cold, and so I'm standing on my front porch, and the sheriff drives up, and he looks at me, and his jaw drops, and he sees my hair smoking, my shorts smoking, everything else, and my fingers and knees melted, blown out. And
I can imagine that.
He just looked at me and he goes, "Oh my God, you just got the hell knocked out of you." And he goes, "Do you need an ambulance?" And jokingly I said no. So he called him off. So my wife and I jumped in the car and took me to the hospital, and they confirmed that I was pretty bad damaged, and I should have never drank that water or anything because I was microwaved. And I stayed in the hospital for over a week in the burn clinic in Fresno Burn Unit in California.
Wow. That's amazing. That's amazing. Have you had any long-term effects from that? Physically, I should say?
Not physically. I just don't get sick that often now, and my spiritual connection is so deep with the other side that it was a life-changing experience in more ways than even spiritual. It was such a deep, profound experience. My appreciation for anything and everything in life in general here, even the spirit and the good and bad things I go through, even as I look at it, kind of smile and said, okay, it is what it is. Let's continue on,
Wow. Well, let's continue on then. Your life is sounding very fascinating. Now, with your shamanistic work, your healing work, but you're also I can't talk tonight. An abductee or a UFO experiencer too, not just seeing UFOs, but interacting with these other beings. Do you have memories of being physically interacting with them, or would you say it's more on an astral level?
Oh no, it's both. Mine's mainly the astral is for the spirit world. You know what I mean? My transactions and everything, the things I've had and experienced is not only me but my family, and I can give you a real quick example of that and how powerful this is. And then I can go into my own personal abduction, but my family thing. One night we are sitting here, and it's in the wintertime, and it's nice and cold outside and everything, but not cold enough to have a frost or, a mist or anything like this. And I had a feeling, because you always know when they're coming. You feel it in your bones. You feel it in your spirit. You just know. And I said, they're coming again, and just like my grandpa said, my dad said, and so I turned around, and I know this may sound crazy, but I put hasp on the inside of my house, every door in my house, and I locked them, padlock. Put the key in my bed, in between the mattress. So if anybody gets the key, they got to go through my wife and myself. And, I'm sitting there, and I didn't put a gun by my bed. I put a camera by my bed, because they've never harmed me. It's almost like sometimes they're just screwing with you. So that night we went to bed, and about 2 o'clock in the morning, I woke up wide awake, jumped up out of bed, ran down the hallway. Bam, my side door is wide open. There's no padlock. The hasp, everything's wide open. My daughter's door is cracked open a little bit, and I had my camera. I flew out the side door, started taking pictures, running around the front of my house. Thank goodness my neighbors are a quarter mile away. He's crazy, but I took all these pictures and got orbs heading up into the sky, probably 15 or 20 of them. And then when I got around to the front, I didn't even look. I stuck my hand up over the fence and took a picture, and we got what looks like a gray dissipating, fading out. But I went back and reached under the bed and pulled that key out. So they came in, unlocked the doors with no problem, came in the house, showed me they could be here, and left.
You say, William, that you know when they're around. Do you ever hear a high-pitched sound?
Oh, yeah, regularly. Mm-hmm. Yeah. Mm-hmm.
Okay.
Definitely.
Well, when I get that, I just turn around and say, naff off, I'm not ready to go anywhere.
Yeah, well, I look at it this way. I'm open to positive experiences. And at first, my first experience when I was young, when they came to the window at my dad's ranch, and it was, more of the tall grays, it scared the crap out of me. I knew even that time when they were coming, because I obviously had pre-experiences before that on the Indian reservation, before I decided to go to spend the summer and, spend a couple of years with my dad. And I think being close to March Air Force Base, the atomic wing, had, because of the proximity, they were probably sampling some, people around thing, but they follow you genetically. I know that for a fact now. My main and my other experience was, instead of them just coming to the window at my dad's place and abduct me that way, I'll tell you something that's very strange. In the back 40, as we called it, there was some hills with giant, looks like fingers, stones coming up out of the ground. You see them on National Geographic and everything. Well, the mountains and hills behind us were like that. So one day I got this feeling, and I took off. I got in trouble, too. Got my butt beat. I was supposed to be watering horses, and I couldn't. I just had to go. So I took off, and I climbed up these big rocks, and I just knew something was there. And I pulled myself up, and I looked over the edge of the rock, and there it was. It was a saucer. Kind of like Lazar talks about the sports model, It's exactly what it looked like. And there was a tall gray, and there was two smaller grays, and it looked like they were taking samples of vegetation or readings of something. But what was really awesome was I looked over the rock. Simultaneously, all three of them looked up at me, and it was like, oh, it's him. And they looked back down to continue what they were doing. And so I kept my head up, and they slowly faded out of view. Everything. The other two, they weren't in the ship. They were 20, 30 feet away from the ship in different directions. Simultaneously looked up, recognized it was like, oh, it's him. And that's the actual feeling I thought. Kind of like, hi, guys. Everything faded out, and about 10 minutes later, the bushes moved a little bit. You heard no sound. And obviously the craft left at that time, and I went home, and I got in trouble for
Well,
not
did it
watering the
leave,
horses.
or did it just did it leave, or just it dissipate? No. Yeah.
It didn't dissipate. Basically, what happened is it just kind of what we call phased, where you couldn't see it, and then it took off, because I could tell by a little bit of dust rose, the plants moved a little bit, and I could feel the static kind of charge as it moved up past the top of this rock, which is about 50 feet off of the ground, higher than they were. So I knew that it, my hair actually kind of, because I've always had long hair, and my hair kind of frizzed up with the static charge.
So it's static. Yeah, mine's like that most mornings.
I wish I had enough hair for that.
So
that was I'm losing mine rapidly. Do you have any sense, William, of where they're from?
I know for a fact some are from Zeta Reticuli, but I also don't know where some of them are, because they are on I never really asked that question of these individuals before, but a lot of the craft that we were involved with and stuff, and programs and everything, had to do with Zeta Reticuli and the tall grays. The little grays are just kind of like worker bees, I guess you could say. They're genetically engineered to be that way. Most of the ones I've had not conflict, but contact with, were ones that look very much like us. You could walk right past them in society. As a matter of fact, there's one that I've seen twice in my life, and I even was driving down the highway and pulled my truck over and went and searched for this guy. It took me 30 minutes and found him sitting inside of a bar. And when I walked in there, it was a little tiny place out of the way in a where migrant workers go, and he was sitting on one side of the bar, and everybody else in that bar was sitting on the other side looking at him like there was something wrong with him. And I walked right in and sat with him, and we picked up the same conversation that we had 30 years before. It was the same guy. Blew me away. Never aged. Timeless. Unbelievable. But most of them are coming from out of our star system, but they have permanent bases right here on Earth now. So you could say some of them are from Earth and our solar system.
Well, here's one question that is really bugging me lately in terms of the whole extraterrestrial experience. Are they really from, let's say they're from the Pleiades or Zeta Reticuli or any of these star systems in our physical universe as we know it? Or are they coming in from slightly alternate dimensions or vibrations that we would normally see? I mean, are they normally, I feel that there are a lot of what's visiting here that's more multidimensional than they are extraterrestrial. Yes. So when you talk about so when you talk about ones like the Zeta Reticuli, are they fully physical like we are, or they still have that aspect of maybe coming from a higher vibration or dimension?
Well, it's really interesting. I'm glad you asked that question, because it's both. We do have beings out there right now that are interdimensional. And even those that come from Zeta Reticuli can be interdimensional, because they pop in and pop out. When you look up in the sky and you see a flash all of a sudden, and there's no satellites, and you look at your computers and I track satellites all the time just to make sure that I'm not seeing something other than when you do research. And they're popping in and out. We call it wormhole. We have to think that these beings are thousands of years and millions of years advanced, ahead of us. So their ways of seeing things and their technologies are so far advanced from ours that we look at it as being more of a fantasy type thing. But the fact is, we do have several races here that are from other worlds outside our star system, our own particular soul system, as we say, SOL. But we definitely have those beings that are interdimensional, and they have been, and that's their existence, interdimensional. They can pop in and out. And these type of beings, the time doesn't, they're kind of immortal in a sense. Time isn't a problem to them. They can jump forwards and backwards and dimensional and everything. And that's part of the reason I know this is going to sound crazy, and a lot of people really need to stop and think about this. And because people don't say, I have good friends that say, well, you can't change time and everything. Bull, you can change time. Part of the reason we're having Mandela effect.
Oh, yes, the Mandela effect. Very familiar with that one. Even had some experiences with that lately with, I forget which celebrity they were talking about. Oh, when Robert Guillaume He just recently passed away within the last month, and yet I remember him passing away a couple years ago. So it's strange things like that keep happening. Now the beings that you have dealt with primarily, would you classify them as benevolent, benign, or have you encountered anything that you would consider to be malevolent?
Well, I'm going to be honest with you. I've been, I came up upon some stuff that was extremely dark, extremely not good, evil. I would even use that to say. And the good thing about it is, being a shaman, now, Mark, this is a good thing. This is where you come in too here, and other people, and really everybody on the show right here, is I like what the aspect of being able to say no. Once you control your own self and your own power and your ability, and that's what this whole thing about shamanism, being a medicine person, not only helping people, but understanding what we are and seeking power. And now we're not talking control over others, we're personal power. So we can control ourselves and balance and interact with the other aspects of ourselves and world. So, some of them are dark, and I've had to face them. A lot of people like to say demons and this and that. That is not the case what these things are. These are beings,
that's just
interdimensional
another
beings.
Label.
Yes,
just another label.
Labels to me make me go, they are what they are.
Oh,
people
I
just
hate
going to
them.
say, oh no, this is this. They got to be right. That's the problem with the labels. I don't.
Well, they have to. I suppose they have to have labels, so it's a descriptive thing. But
Yeah,
it's
I understand.
completely out.
But either way, it is a good ending or a bad ending. Or they're working for the good or a dark force. But most of my experiences have been with good. The beings and everything that I have dealt with are really trying to help mankind. They're a part of this. We're kind of a part of the same team here. Things that are going to happen in the future, which I've been told too many times about. I've seen it, vision-wise and everything. I've been shown it. Things that are going to happen that show you where we're heading. This is a very important time in history to understand that not everything is bad out there. There are some dark forces. Now, don't get me wrong, but if you're in tune with yourself, you're going to know it instantaneously, and you're going to know what to do to counter that. But as for bad and good, they're both here. Yeah, definitely.
Well, I don't know if you're familiar with John Edmonds in Arizona with his Stardust Ranch. We recently interviewed him on this program, and I've been talking to him a lot, and he's been dealing in his location with these really pretty much darker, malevolent types of grays for the last 20 years. And his story, he's become more public with it to the point where he's looking for help from people because they can't really. They're trying to sell the ranch right now, and it's a hard time. The real estate market is what it is, and they still have to live there and deal with this stuff pretty much every day. It's like, how do you, it's one thing when we deal as a paranormal investigator, and Irene and I have done a lot of that over the last many years, dealing with a spirit. But when you're dealing with these types of beings, trying to get them to back off or stop is a bit of a challenge.
Yes, it's a bit of a challenge, but how come there's people out there? I don't understand why people, when things like this happen, don't call in somebody that is a shaman, and I'm not talking about somebody that read a few books. There's some really good people out there, and I'm not just, I'm not trying to pump myself up at all, and I'm not even using my name, but they're local areas, people in those local areas within 100 miles around, see if they can find somebody that's a shaman, somebody that looks at both of these, at all aspects of this, to see if there's any communication or if they can do something to help get this out of there. We need a deeper means or level of communication, I think, with these types of beings when it comes to this point. They're not going to leave, so why not try to understand why they're being the way they are? My first thing in anything I do, whether it's with a negative spirit or entity or whatever, is try to communicate. What's wrong here? What are you here for? And if you're serious, you're going to get an answer. I've had people, such negative entities come at them that they call me on my CB radio, and I go down to their house, and they're standing there with an AK-47 with their wife behind them in a wall, so they can take the brunt of whatever's coming, and there's nothing there. But their house is shaking. They say, as soon as we called you, this thing left my house and headed your direction. and you have to face these things off. So I would say I know there's dark, and I know this, but even with darkness, they will communicate with you. But these entities, some of them won't. They just want power. They want you. They want that area, and that's it. So my question, Mark, would be: have they called anybody in to try to communicate with?
That's a good question. I'll have to ask him that the next time I talk to him, because I know they've had a lot of people in investigating the area. They've had psychics or whatnot, but I don't know if they've really had a shaman or a local person come in connected with the area that might be able to help. They do know that they have a couple of portals on the property where they've seen craft coming through, and where these things seem to materialize into his house when they attack. They mostly go after his wife. And he fights them off. And he has said, now, this is up for debate, but he has said that he's killed many of them. He has a sword that he uses, but he says if you don't take the heads, the bodies vanish. He supposedly sent some tissue out for testing many years ago, and it came back as non-human. It had a combination of plant and animal proteins and DNA, but nothing human. So it's a Are
these the smaller grays?
Yes, smaller grays.
Are these the smaller grays?
Yes.
That makes sense. You just described their biology, so that makes perfect sense to me.
Yeah.
Those are drones. They don't have any feelings or anything.
Right, which
They're
just
being
seems
sent
like
by something else.
You would think they would retaliate if you've gotten a couple of them killed, but they just keep coming back and doing their thing. So who knows? Another question, and this is something that Irene talked about, and I were talking about just the other day about the nature of these negative types of spiritual forces. People call them demons or whatnot. Now, when those people called you and they said this thing left our house, was on its way over to you, have you encountered any personal attacks by these? Because we were discussing, because we work sometimes some dark cases, Irene more than me. I've never personally dealt with a negative entity, and we were discussing, what kind of attacks can these things do on you? So have you had any of your own personal experiences?
Yeah, definitely. My first experience is when because I studied, the whole Native American aspect in medicine and the ceremonies, lodges, vision quests, everything when I was young, as I grew up. I was experiencing it, not studying it, I lived it, When I left there and went back to Alabama, the people that taught me said, wherever you go, find the medicine people or the different things of that area and learn about their ways too. So I said, okay, I went to Alabama. What do they have in Alabama? Voodoo and hoodoo. So I started hanging around these people, understanding. And one day I walked in this one house, and this old black man, great guy, man. He just had the greatest personality you could ever have. Big guy, And I come walk in the house, and he looked at me and he goes, "House don't want you here." And he goes, "I like you. That's why I'm here. Don't go in that back room." And so I went in the back room, and they had some moonshine. That's what I was there to buy, actually, because I was a young man in service, never tried it. So I decided to try. So me and my friend was there, and when we were leaving, there's, what a pantry is. Now, I would go from the kitchen into a pantry area into the living room, a little hallway, and then the living room. We came through this pantryway. It was okay, no problem. There's a cord hanging down. You turn the light on. It's cool. You walk through. Food on both sides. No doors, no windows. As we're on our way back through, I was about 7 feet from the door, and the pantryway is pitch black on the inside. You can see the door on the other side, because it's a walkthrough. And this thing came out of nowhere. I mean, right out of midair. And it had just like talons, I guess you could say, with it. I just seen like from the shoulder up, the elbow, it was like skin right to the bone, scaly, came right out of it. I leaned backwards and ran into my friend, leaning backwards trying to get away from this thing. And the first thing he did was grab me and go, "What was that?" So he's seen it too. And it instantly disappeared. And it was like a talon, like this evil thing coming at me. So I wouldn't go through that deal. That country. No way. I wasn't going to go through there. And I was powering myself up, my protective energy and everything, the way I was taught. And I was getting ready to go through, and this little girl come walking through the other end, walked right on in, pulled the little light cord, walked right on through with nothing wrong. And it still took me and my friend about a minute or two to look around and then get through there. And as we're on the way out, the old man looked and said, "I told you." That was one experience. The second experience was when I was telling you about the house, and the guy, 300 pounds. I practiced kung fu with him. I know he could devastate a lot of people if he wanted to, but he's so scared. Knows kung fu, has an SKS, has his wife behind him in the corner, calls me on the radio. We've got two Christian type individuals reading the Bible. This thing's still coming through the house. They're getting scared now. I can hear it over the radio. They're panicking. So I grabbed my sage and everything, headed down to my property line, because I keep my area blessed, my whole property, house, everything on a regular basis. And I stopped at my property line. I said, I'm coming for you. I'm not afraid of you. And you have to leave. And I walked across my property line, had my sage lit and everything. And as I'm walking, I didn't know, but they called my wife and told her it just left the house. It's heading his way. Tell him to get ready. But I was on my own out in the middle of the dark at 2 o'clock in the morning. So whatever was going to happen was going to happen. And I heard this thing come ripping through the bush and manzanita and everything like a bear. And I turned and looked into the darkness of these trees, really thick cover. I couldn't see anything. And I just walked off into that darkness and said, let's do this. I'm ready. And it ran away from me, back further and further and further, because I was energized. As a shaman, I was ready to do this battle, in the shaman's way, not grabbing a gun and doing that, because that doesn't really have any effect. So it left, and I went down to my friend's house, and they said, this thing was shaking trees 4 inches across, leaving here, heading in your direction. And they were scared. I could tell in his eyes, and they were, how your voice stutters when you're scared. Now Dan, like I said, big old boy, and his wife was sitting there going, we're moving. We're not staying here, we're moving. And they did. About 3 weeks later, they moved out of the area.
Now do you understand me, Mark?
Yes, I do. Now I get it.
Very powerful. Very powerful, I'm telling you. Even you have to have I know this sounds crazy. No
fear.
When you get in that shamanic state, you're ready. Whatever's going to happen is going to happen, and you're there to win. You're not there to fail.
Well, I'm not a shaman, but I do work the same way. I have no fear whatsoever, and my energy is, it's unbelievable.
If you have a doubt of fear, it's going to use it against you.
That's right.
That's the key.
That's right.
Are there some
That's
types
why I don't fail, Mark?
Okay, yes, as you keep telling me.
50 odd years that haven't failed yet.
One of the concepts that we talk about, William, and I'd like to get your take on it, is what some people refer to as demon or demonic may not even be technically negative. It depends on your perspective. Let's say you have some type of low-level thought form entity created, out of a negative person, whether it's a tulpa, whether somebody created it on purpose, or whether it's just coalesced negative energy that gets enough of a low-level intelligence that it seeks out people susceptible to create issues in their life, create more negativity just to feed on it. I liken it more to like a paranormal parasite. Yeah, it's not necessarily evil. It's not like, is the mosquito evil for sucking your blood? Well, you may think so. It's doing what it does
only
to
survive.
Female. Yeah. Isn't that true of all in humanity too?
I was waiting for a comment on that, Mark. I really was.
Ooh.
No, you're right.
Is it only the female that bites you then?
Yes, actually, that's very true. Yeah. And so the male just lives, like in life, for having a good time, and then he dies. But the female is the one that goes bite you because the blood is necessary for the larva, and for that production, things of this nature. And that's very true. But also, Mark, it's very true what you're saying. You have entities out there.
From now on, I'm just going to say, get off, you bitch.
And you'd be right. Mark, the main thing is you're 100% right there. There are other entities out there that feed, like you said, the mosquito, off of different energies. And if you're putting off those energies, those lower forms of energy are going to be attracted to you. Just like if you turn on a light bulb at nighttime, what's the first thing that comes to that light bulb? A moth, or bugs that are seeking the light, because it reminds them of the sun during the day, so they're seeking the light. You have other insects out there, you turn on a light, like a cockroach, and they're gone. So it's the same thing in a sense. We're just using terminology so regular folks out there can understand it. But if you have a negative energy and you're always worried about bills, or you're always worried about Iraq or this and that, guess what you're going to draw towards you? Exactly that. Things that are going to feed off that negativity, and they'll cause problems in your life because they will snowball that effect in your life and help you make it bigger and bigger and bigger until you can't find a way out. And you're at the bottom of the hole and you can't see no way out. And all it takes to get out is a changing of your mind and spirit, seeing things from a different point of view. Demons and stuff, negative spirits and negative entities are out there. Call them whatever you want. The facts are they can be dealt with in appropriate ways, but you have to be strong enough.
Let me ask this question then from a shamanic perspective. Look at nature. When you look at nature, there does not seem to be, again, going back to the mosquito there does not seem to be good and evil in nature. There just is. And it's our perception of it sometimes that we call good and evil. Yet when we deal with humans and humanity, which can be do incredible cruelty and sadistic actions, and we look at that as evil, and then we look at these spirits which could have that type of evil or intent. Is it really evil? Is it just our perspective? Is it more balanced like nature, and we're just trying to put labels to it because we may not like some of it happening? Or do you feel that there truly is more negative, evil types of entities?
I walk the middle road, so I know that there's a dark side, and the reason I like what you said there, we've labeled things again. Things sometimes to one person is not evil or dark. It could be a necessary action that frees them. A lot of negative experiences in my lifetime has freed me from thought patterns, following a particular lifestyle, or things of this nature. So the negative experiences in our lives are really positive. I know, people, how about a death? Well, in my way, when somebody passes on, they're going home. They don't have to worry about this anymore. That's a good thing. We miss the physical aspects of that individual, and having been dead and alive, I see both sides of this. Interesting, I like the way you put that, because the facts are there is no such thing as it's your point of view, Mark. You hit the nail on the head there. Something that let's do this. Just recently, my daughter was involved in something, and this guy came in and was a violent situation and everything, and the individual got shot. And it wasn't life-threatening or anything like that. But now that individual, that's a very negative thing that happened to him. And of course, his family would look, oh, this is bad. But he was talking about, killing other people and this and that and everything. So was that a positive thing that this individual got shot? Yes, it was. And there's no emotional remorse or anything about it, because a negative action was taking place and something positive took place to stop that, even though it had to do with a weapon. Okay, so really what is good and what is bad really depends on your perspective of it. Now, if you're, let's say, going to say, and I know a lot of people out there will say, oh, Satanist this and Satanist that, about the, Satanist church and everything, they see that as being very positive, because greed and things like this and other things are very positive. That's how they see we get ahead this way. Where other people would think that greed is not a good thing. So do you want to get ahead or not? How are you going to get ahead? If you look at something as greed, I also look at don't have to kick a gift horse in the mouth if some opportunity comes along. Oh, I wouldn't do that because of so-and-so, I don't like him. But there's a beneficial opportunity because they want to hire you to do a job. The same thing is in the spirit realm. Everything is a learning experience to me. I don't see a good or bad. It just depends on the circumstances and the situation.
The one other question, we can shift topics here in a minute. When dealing from a spiritual level, when you say when people die, one of the things that we've heard stories about, and again, I'm talking from being as a paranormal researcher and investigator, dealing with some type people, when there's a house that seems to have presences in it, whether they're human or not, that are still stuck, and they haven't quite moved on yet. And there seem to be some cases where some of these more malevolent or non-human types of entities can have control over these human entities and not let them leave or have a certain control. Do you that's the perception anyway. Do you feel that that's true, or do you feel that when that spirit of that person who dies, they will cross over when they're ready to cross over?
They'll cross over when they're ready to cross over, and some spirits are just hanging here because they are afraid to cross over. So they have to feel comfortable. They have to understand. And some spirits are not leaving because they're watching their family. They're hanging around. They're trying to help as best they can because of things that they had done in their life before they left. Now they're trying to make things right. That really is up to the spirit. Now I do believe that because of a particular type of death, if let's say it happens and they don't really realize it's so quick and everything that they kind of become trapped in between. Sometimes they don't know what to do, how to cross over, and that's when people, shamans and other people help the spirit move over. Basically, it's not helping them move over; it's making them aware that, shall we say, the drawbridge is down now and they can cross over, and that this and this did happen to them. Some spirits don't know that they're dead yet, because just because of how things are in that particular circumstance. So, yeah, I think that's that's the best answer I could get.
Well, I guess part of my question on that was to get back to the original aspect of it is, can an outside force, say a non-human entity, control or block or prevent a human spirit who has passed from crossing over?
Negative.
I've
never had that happen in my life.
Okay, and I'm only going off of stories.
I've had them interfere. I will say this. I've had them interfere so they try to get you distracted. Mm-hmm. But once you're focused on this individual and that individual's focused on you for this process, then it's a done deal.
Okay. That makes some more sense.
I'm interested in the question of what you're talking about, the other side. I'm assuming, William, you're not exactly referring to Judeo-Christian heaven. So where is the other side? What is your understanding of the other side?
It's right here with us. That's what a lot of people, have a hard time with. It's right here amongst us. It's with us. All it is our ability to perceive. My ability to perceive the other side is innate. I deal with it on a regular daily basis. I mean, every day I keep my candles going in my house. I'm talking to the spirits. I'm getting information, writing books, doing things, do this, do that. And I'll talk, what do you think? Oh, okay, let's do this, It's innate. It's just such a part of me. It's like talking to you guys right here. So it's right here. It's just a phase. It's like a radio station. If you're just a little off dial, then you can perceive it more so. So we're all a radio station with our own frequencies. So the other side is just a different frequency, just a hair off. But you can tune into that frequency, and it can tune into you. And when you're both at that balance point, then you get the radio station.
So they're like in a continuing existence of a slightly
all it
different
is.
Reality that obviously that everybody doesn't see themselves, but they're like almost like parallel with us, is what you're saying?
Yes, 100%. 100% parallel.
See, the radio...
And we don't die. We just switch over.
Yeah. The radio frequency, I use that example to a lot of people when they try to think about these other worlds, is the fact that, when you look at the entire light spectrum, we see a very thin sliver of it, and it goes off in both directions. That's actually kind of the way reality is with other dimensions and realities and vibrations. Everything is vibration. We all vibrate at certain rates, and moving off from death from the physical into a spiritual form is raising that vibration, going up to that other level. But even what we think of as the other side, there are many levels there, both above and below. That's what people do. There isn't a single heaven. There is multiple realms, things that we can hardly even imagine. In fact, it's beyond our comprehension to imagine, because we're so limited by our physical, brains and what we can perceive, like time. Time is an illusion. We think it's linear, but it's really, it's all happening at once, which is a mind bender for sure.
Yes, I love how you put that. I don't believe in time. If you've heard any of the other radio shows that we talk about, and my wife, if she's there with me on the show sometimes, I say, ask my wife about time, and she goes, he's on Indian time. He does things when they need to be done. He does, I got to do this by a certain time. I go by feeling. I deal with the spirit. my balance, what I feel, and that's what I go by. So my concept of time is totally different. Time is an illusion. Time has been created to make us focus on specific events, shall we say, in time. We have the habit of using time when really it's in the now. We learn from the past, we hope for the future, but we have to live in the now. And that's what people forget to do. And that's why we're having all the problems in the world right now. You only have so many heartbeats. What do you want to put your mind on? What do you want to focus your mind and spirit on? That's what gives you power.
You see, guys, when your wives are on you, like, why haven't you fixed the garage yet, or why haven't you cleaned out the shed? You just go, well, I'm doing it. I'm on Indian time. It'll get done.
Yeah, so it runs parallel. Everything's running parallel. It'll happen eventually because it's running parallel.
Yeah. It's convincing our spouses that, hey, let's relax. Indian time. We'll get to it. Don't worry. They don't buy that often.
She's learned with me that that's the way it is, and that's the way it works, because I know we're not going to go right now, or something. And I'll be darned, we'll leave and there'll be a tree in the road. And if we would have been driving that tree, we probably would have hit our vehicle, or there's an accident or something. It becomes an intuitive process. You live your life by intuition. It's that simple.
Just a quick question for you, William. What are your views on reincarnation, given what we're talking about?
We have a choice to come back if we wish, or we can stay and in the spirit world and help and go to other realms, other worlds, whatever. A lot of people think that we're just reincarnated here. That's not the case. My experience, I have memories of many other different existences in other places, Mars being one. It's like my wife, she always looked at me and kind of chuckled. Well, he's on Mars again. Because I'll go out and I'll just look at and I'll talk about things that I have no idea where the information comes from. And then 10 years later, science proves it. So all we have to do, we all have these aspects of us, our genetic memories, our spiritual memory. We have 3 types of memory. The memory of this world right here, what we're doing, this experience in this world. Then we have a genetic memory of all past ancestors and everything that we've ever, our bloodlines, our genetic lines, everything we've ever came from in the past. And then we have a spiritual memory. That is not only of all of our genetics and everything of this, but our experiences and memories of other worlds and everything as well, too. A lot of people like to call all these 3 combined together in a Akashic record in a sense, but you can touch base with them. We all do. Sometimes we'll remember a past existence, whether it's here or somewhere else. Sometimes we don't. It just depends on your state of mind and where you're at with yourself over time, and teaching yourself on how to recall these memories.
Now, you said the key word here, and I want to talk a little bit about that, Mars. Now, you had mentioned earlier in the program about being involved in certain programs. Now, I just wanted to clarify that, we've had Andrew DiBasciago on our program a few times, a really fascinating gentleman. Now, I'm not confused. Did you ever work with him? With Andrew?
Oh, yeah, I trained him.
Okay. Well, that's what I wanted to clarify, because it's been a long time, so I wanted to broach that subject.
You're quite good friends, aren't you, William?
Excuse
you and
me?
Andrew. You're quite good friends, you and Andrew, aren't you?
Yeah, he looked for me for over 30 years, and he finally found me. And after he found me, it still took him a year to talk me into saying what I knew, and I still haven't said everything. Some things I won't, because you start getting followed again. You start having health problems. They start watching you. You just start noticing all of a sudden your house is flown over more. We've just been having all kinds of activity, and I live 30 miles out of town, 3 miles back on a dirt road. Okay. Mm-hmm. I've tried to hide from a lot of things and not even deal with these programs and stuff for well over 30 years, and Andrew showed up. So being a shaman, I figured everything had to come full circle. So I had to help Andrew tell the truth. And that's how it all came to be. If you have to come full circle with yourself, and you can't hide from things that you've done and everything all your life. You have to face that and finally get it out of your system and say, okay, it's over with now. And then you can talk about it. And that's what happened.
William, what parts of the program can you talk about? Now, you said you trained Andy. I know Andy went through 2 phases in his life. One when he was younger through the Project Pegasus program, doing the time travel, as they call it. And then later on in his college years, there was the Mars Jump Room program. Which one were you involved in?
I was involved in both of those programs in the very beginning because we have a Siskiyou College, Siskiyou, the college. I mean, God, I keep saying that word backward. College of the Siskiyous up here. It's interesting because when I was 8 years old, I ran away and went to that college. Okay, so now I'll start that off to begin with. Ran away from the Indian reservation in San Diego and traveled all the way to Weed, California, the College of Siskiyous for no reason whatsoever. I had no idea. And then years later, Andrew and I started talking about things, but I went through the early training like he did, understanding things about jumps, what they needed to be, and got, pretty proficient within the agencies of this and that. They have them in Wright-Patterson Air Force Base, Edwards Air Force Base, El Segundo, California, another one in New Mexico. White Sands had one that was taken out of there. But the fact of the matter is, in the 70s, in the early 70s, next thing I knew, I'm in a training program. I'm teaching, okay? And because I was good at what I do, and I still am. And next thing I know, the individual comes through, a new class comes through, and Andrew's involved in this and everything. And he was a, kind of a outspoken kid and running around doing the same thing all people do. And I'm saying kid because I'm 63 years old now, so you have to understand this. We were young then. And he's in the program. We had to teach him about, how to expect things and defend himself. The psychological aspects of when you come out one area into another, how to prepare yourself to fight if you have to and things, because sometimes you just don't know. If we have not reconnoitered an area, and you go into that area and I'm not there to protect you because you're part of another different program, you know what I'm saying? And you come out into an area, you already got this training. It's like basic training in a sense for people going to go into their advanced individual training. Well, we were the advanced individual training for VIPs at that time. So we turned around and trained him. And then after that, I didn't see him anymore for, a while. And then next thing I knew, he's doing the teleportation, and I was his security on Mars. During the time he was there, we had our little conflict, this and that with, some of the life forms there. And then I didn't see him anymore after that until I ended the program, and he didn't even see him then until he showed up in my front yard. And when he described who he was, which I knew, as soon as I seen him, I knew who he was, but my wife didn't. And then he explained, we started talking, and he mentioned a few names and described the people to a T, and my wife broke down in tears and started walking away. She thought Andy was here to come and get me back in the programs, and I had to go get her and tell her, no way. I'd never seen her go to tears in a long time, but it hit her hard. So yeah, Andy and I trained him there, and we knew in El Segundo. That's when Howard Hughes was involved, and we did a show on that. He was a banker, part of the programs and everything with the CIA. As a matter of fact, Howard Hughes used CIA satellites always to communicate. Everybody knows that in the agencies, stuff like that during that time. So after that, I think I went my way in the programs, and Andy continued on his way. So I was pretty surprised when Andy showed up in my yard unexpectedly that one day, and a year later I decided to come out and say, okay, yeah, I was part of the programs, and this is what we did. And the guy that introduced us died 2 years later.
Now, the program, for a lot of people who may not be as familiar with Andy's story, is that the government had these secret bases and technology that they were using that utilized both teleportation and then there's the chronovisor, which has always been a little of a gray area for me. I don't quite think I fully understand what the chronovisor does.
Chronovisor.
Go ahead.
Okay, chronovisor is basically a device that you can turn around and see future events with. So there was actually the chronovisor and everything, from what I was originally told, the Catholic Church had something to do with this a long time, some of the inventors during that time, banking and everything. But the whole situation that Andy was talking about is being able to glimpse future events and everything. But now we've eclipsed that. If they want to view a future event, they go there. You don't have to go there. When they reconnoiter the area, set up a team reconnoiter, go on in, see what needs to be done, and go from there. We're having some serious ripple effects in our time sequencing and everything right now, as everybody's seeing out there. So that's what it was. Time dilation programs, looking glass technology. I was involved with some of that and the weapons technology for protecting our things. When Star Wars in during the Reagan administration, they never stopped it. They kept right on going. We have rods up there. We have particle beams. We got lasers. We got everything up there now.
So the secret space program, and seemed to be a real big part of this. MK Ultra seemed to have a hand in this, and right now with the TV show, the success of Stranger Things, where they actually mentioned it being part of the MK Ultra program, is really starting to shed a light on these programs that happened back in the 70s and 80s. The whole Mars thing, a lot of people hear that and think that that's just absolute, horseshit. Let's just call it what it is. And yet they can. And yet there's an aspect to Andy's story that is so consistent that and is so intriguing. And I don't know what it is about me. For whatever reason, I'm a Mars geek. There's just something about Mars that calls to me. Like I love watching the movie The Martian with Matt Damon, just because it looks at it from a more realistic standpoint, and then yet. And these are direct questions I want to see if you can answer. What we're being told about Mars being so inhospitable also sounds like horseshit. Because
it is. I'm sorry. I'm trying to hold back right here, but there's so much BS going on out there over Mars. It's unbelievable.
You have the Curiosity rover, you have NASA doing all these photos. Now, again, there's all the websites out there where people overanalyze every little photograph on Mars, and they'll look at a rock and they'll say, oh, there's this woman here, or there's a skull or a statue. And you know what? I'm open-minded. If I see something, and I've seen some strange stuff in a lot of these photos, and yet most of the time they look like rocks. But again, that's only most of the time. I would say about 10 to 15% of some of the material I've seen is really compelling. So where does that put us? They tell us that Mars' atmosphere is so thin, it's not even like 1% of Earth's atmosphere. Well, if that was the case, okay, why would there be enough air pressure to have tornadoes on Mars, twisters? Why wouldn't you would need a parachute to land the Opportunity rover that would need to be several miles wide in order to catch enough air resistance to drop, and yet the parachutes are the size of the ones they use on Earth.
That's right. You hit that. I love what you're doing. Go ahead.
Yeah. Now but here's the other question that's always kind of up in the air. And I'll ask you directly. Does Mars have a magnetic field? Yes or no?
In certain areas, it has very good magnetic field in certain areas of it, And the thing that we have to understand right now, and people are forgetting this, and I know I'm kind of chuckling, I'm holding back a lot right here, just because I understand the programs, I understand what they're doing. If we can make a TR-3B, these things like this, we have a reverse engineered technology and craft. Don't you think that we're smart enough to create a magnetic field to protect our inhabitants of the craft, or these bases that we have there on the planet, also in other platforms that we have in deep space, within our star system, 2 of them, as a matter of fact. Yes, we do. So when everybody starts talking about, because of radiation, this magnetic field, I start laughing. I can't help it. If we have the technology to create all these other craft and everything, and we have the technology now to create a magnetic field strong enough to keep in fusion, keeping out the bad things out there in space is not a problem in any way, shape, or form.
Well,
and when you find a high gravitational area on Mars, there's a good chance you're going to find another base there too. Planet-wise, there is a magnetic field. It is not as strong as ours.
But it does. But there is a magnetic field.
It does have a magnetic field.
Yeah, there is enough of a magnetic field to shield at least some of the harmful radiation coming in. Because they make it sound like, there's no magnetic field, so you'll fry. You can't spend much time there. No. And even they're talking about interstellar space travel. We went to the moon a few times in the 70s, and then they mysteriously stopped. And then then some scientists at NASA said, the problem we have is getting past the Earth's Van Allen radiation belts. It's like, didn't we do that when we went to the frickin' moon? They're in the middle of space. They're going through radiation belts in these 1960s capsules, and these guys live for years with no cancer and problem. Now you're telling us that, we can't go to the moon because of the Van Allen radiation belt? It's like...
exactly.
That's like saying Roswell was a weather balloon.
Yeah, exactly. And this is the funny part. Now, I like what you got. I love this show right here because everybody thinks, you're looking at this. Oh, we already did this. These people lived for a long time. We've been doing this for a long period of time. And the only reason we quit going to the moon is because we went to Mars. The original astronaut that's supposed to be going to Mars turning around, they tried to kill him several times. So he moved to Panama and lived there until he died. He was going to tell everybody what was really happening. And that was in the 60s.
Wait,
the situation with Mars right now.
So you were saying that there was somebody else who went to Mars when they shouldn't have, and that caused a problem? I'm trying to understand that.
No, they were supposed to be the first astronaut to go to Mars.
Okay.
In the program, and they got bumped, so they were going to tell people about it. And then the life threat, the threats on his life happened. He left the United States, and he's dead now. But I had a chance to talk to this gentleman one time. And I'm telling you, he was so convincing and told me everything that he knew. I had to believe him because he mentioned certain things within agencies that only people that work within the programs would know. Straight up.
Are we still going to Mars? Are we there right now?
Oh, yeah. And we also have 2 other platforms out there we're dealing with. What do they think all these out there? They're just not secret satellite programs they're sending up. They're sending supplies, all types of other things up there. And, we have military platforms up there. It's kind of funny because I was looking at Yahoo just a couple of days ago, and I've seen this article talking about these rods, these platforms in space, where you use these rods, which are kinetic weapons. And I just kind of chuckled and said, these things have been up there for a long time. This technology of rail guns and all this other stuff is being used and has been used. We even got pictures, from the ISS space station and other capsules of us firing things in space, particle beams and things like this. So, yes, we're at Mars. We're doing things. We're preparing to get a lot more people up there right now. I'm not saying that they have a 1,000,000-person civilization or anything like this. When I was in, I only knew of about 12 to 1,500 personnel that were within the programs at that time, period. And that's when I was, exiting. And shall we say, the programs and the service and everything. So there's a lot more going on out there right now. They had many ships. I'm not talking 100 or anything. When I knew everything, there was 7 solid ships, large class ones, out there that had anti-gravity technology, things of this. We call them jump ships. Those are the ones that come down to Earth and go back out. There's other ones out there that are platforms that are never going to, they don't enter the atmosphere. They just stay out there. So we have this civilization that is preparing for what's going to happen to our planet and everything way ahead of time because they've known since the 40s and 50s where our planet's heading, where society is heading. And they've broke away from us. They keep the technology and everything for themselves, and they keep everything going on Mars and in space. And you and I now are the regular society, but thank God that our technology is getting to the point where we're starting to create the fusion and the anti-grav. The teleportation, things of this nature for ourselves, because they're not going to release that. It's going to be 50 years before they release any more of their stuff that they have, and there is not going to be any disclosure from the government on what's going on Mars at all.
Oh yeah, I never thought everybody. I know a lot of people in the ufology community, and they're always talking about disclosure, and and I tell them it's never going to happen because then they're giving away their goodies, their power. And you know what? If they've already built this stuff to save themselves, it's like you mentioned, it's like Richard Dolan's term, the breakaway civilization, where they're doing their own thing and leaving us back 100 years in the past with ancient combustion engine technology that's 100 years old, and oil and all of these unclean fuels. And so with that being said, let me ask a little more specifically on Mars, just because, like I said, I'm a Mars nut. How many trips how many trips have you taken there? Do you remember at all?
Did I remember? See, I got a box of notes here that I've hidden for a long time, and I pulled it out when Andrew came by. And I'm going through back and forth through this thing, looking in, because I'm writing a book. And when it gets published, it's really going to be an interesting thing. But that's going to be a year or so down the road, maybe a hair more, and everything. But I've been there several times. We're not talking more than 10, on mission wise and everything. But when I was younger, I know I was there a lot more. I will say 15, 20, right around that many times, period.
And what kind of
Not
life?
more.
What kind of life is on Mars that's indigenous to Mars?
Well, most of the stuff is under, goes under the sand and the cracks and crevices. They got some tentacle creatures there. The photographs that NASA already has is proven everything that I can talk about here. They have flowing water. They have mosses. They have trees. They have a multitude of things. They have a really pretty blue sky. And if you didn't have an atmosphere, you would have a black sky, just like if you're looking off the moon, you know what I mean, or some other planet like that. So there's pretty blue sky with water moisture in the air that accumulates on the rover, all this type of stuff. This is the real world up there, ladies and gentlemen. It isn't what they are telling you it is at all. And any agencies, including Elon Musk or anybody that's going to go to Mars, has been absorbed into the programs. That's how come they're able to go up there and do what they're going to do. The reason they have private industry and is funding mega private industries to go in there, because then the government doesn't have to answer to what they're doing.
It also seems like with what's been happening with NASA in the last 15, 16 years between, Obama and even Bush cutting back all the funding for NASA, and now we don't even have a manned space program publicly anyway.
Exactly.
We have to catch a ride with the Russians, who they keep screaming are our enemy every 5 seconds, and yeah, they're building the new capsule. I just can't remember the name of it off the top of my head, which looks like the old 60s
Orion.
capsules. Orion, yeah. And I'm looking at this, and it seems like what they've done is they're taking to their advantage the issues with society, keeping people grounded on Earth with Earth problems, so that they don't have to fund NASA. Nobody cares anymore. They're worried about getting shot or who's president or like you said, Afghanistan or whatever, and nobody has that passion for exploring space like we used to, and so they wipe out the programs. Well, yeah, we do, but I'm saying in general, they're dumbing down the public to keep,
Yes.
and making you look away while they can go and do all this other stuff. They talk about these upcoming missions to Mars in the future, and it's just a dog and pony show. It's just not going to happen. And then will we reach that point where maybe they screw up or something happens where it will happen? Maybe, is there a possible breakdown in this machine, this black ops hole that they've created, that's going to self-destruct to the point where this all comes out, whether they like it or not?
It's already happened, and I'm sitting here talking to you. And more of this is going to happen over time when people start, coming out and thinking about, man, my future generations, what's going on. There are people within this breakaway civilization that is feeding information out right now. They give certain individuals information, this and this and this is happening, so we know how to adjust our own selves and adapt to what's coming. I'm full of this information. The thing about it is there are people, cracks in that situation now. They seal them up as soon as they find them. I'm going to tell you that right now. People disappear very, very quickly. But the fact of the matter is, to a point that is starting to happen. The good thing is we, on the normal side of things, regular society, our sciences are coming up to the point where we're going to be able to get up there and do things ourselves. But nothing leaves the planet unless it's been okayed. And they join the program. That's all there is to it right now. But things are going to break apart. We know what's going on. I think everybody knows what's going on. This is the key for anybody. You can be the dumbest rock on the planet out there. That is not an issue. When they start backing off on NASA, you can bank they got something better going on already. Mm-hmm. It's just the way it is.
It's even like the technology for here on Earth, where they keep us based on petroleum products, and which makes money. Yeah. It makes them insane amounts of money, and instead of using clean technology that it would be cheap and available to everyone, well, nobody's going to make any money off of that. So, they keep us, like, it is a form of slavery we're in this society, where they, anybody who, I know of many stories of people who've invented items, they try to go get a patent, and then suddenly things happen to those people. They're either killed or they go on the run because they're never going to let that technology out. They want to keep us on the tit, and don't want us, because if we're not on that tit, they don't make any money. That's kind of
That's
where...
how come I went off the grid. That's why I went off the grid 100%.
Now, I'm hearing stories about that, too, where people are trying to go off the grid, and the local governments are coming in and condemning their properties, saying, well, you're not connected to city water, city power, or sewage, so you can't get a certificate of occupancy. And they condemn the...
That's greed.
Yep, no, that's happened.
Greed.
There was this veteran couple I was reading about. They tried to make their property clean and live off the grid, and they got evicted because they were being forced to be on city water, city power, and they couldn't get their certificate of occupancy without it.
Do you know, over here, they encourage people to go green.
Yep.
Yeah.
Here in California, we don't have a problem with that. You can go green all you want. They want you to do that. They don't want you hooked up to the main grid. And really, I mean, you can be. That is an issue. It's not that they don't want. But what's happening there, Mark, in those places, is you notice what you said, city power, city this. They're losing money from these oil things, and the big people in these other electric companies and things know that we can't have that. We're going to lose money. If we lose money, you lose money. So it's all back around to the corporate greed thing and control, like you're saying, Mark. The good thing is we've got a lot of people out there now in countries and states, even though, shall we say, other people don't like to believe in what's happening in the environment, it is happening. And the other good thing, getting off the grid is taking care of yourself. You're finding a better balance. You're not using a bunch of products that are going to turn around and poison the next 5 generations. You made a decision. So that's why you go off the grid, no matter where you are. The point is, even if you're forced to have their water and this and that, you can still go a good chunk off the grid by having solar panels and everything, where they got to buy your power.
Yeah, that's what they've got. There's many houses over here have solar power panels on the roof. We've got fields of solar panels.
Yeah, I'm running off solar right now. I'm doing a whole radio show and everything right now off just power from the sun, free. And we're talking across the planet.
But even solar power is kind of an antiquated technology compared to what Tesla was trying to do back in the 30s.
Sure.
His tower in Long Island, and he was going to broadcast free power through the air to everybody with cheap devices. And, of course, Rockefeller shut him down because he couldn't make any money off of that.
Quick.
Yeah.
Yeah, very true. But the thing about it is, once you have your system set up, and I'll be honest with you, here at my place, I only got 6 panels. I run my house, my entertainment, everything, whether it's rain, shine, whatever. But once you get your system set up, and it don't cost no 10, 20, 30 grand, it costs me a total of $500 to set my system up, and with another $400 or $500 in battery. So we're talking $1,000, $1,500, and I've been sitting here for 5 years doing my own thing with no problems, with no mistakes, no anything, running this whole show on 120 volts, 130 volt, whatever it is, running right here, and I'm only using 13.2 volts. I'm looking at my power pack right now. You see what I'm saying?
Right.
We've been taught to use mega power when we don't have to, And the other thing is, once you're off the grid and you got your solar, it's free forever.
Yep, and you're not reliant on a city or company or anything to take care of you. And this is why, I'll try to keep my ranting to a minimum. But I call it that part of the nanny state where they're trying to keep everybody to be so dependent on government services. When, hey, if you don't need them, then you don't need to spend the money on them. But then, of course, they need the taxes. They need to justify taxing you in order to spend the money on something.
Mark, here, Mark. Sorry, William. I interrupted. Sorry, I was going to say here, but with the solar powers, you get enough to do for electricity for your house for a year, and any excess you can sell back to the electricity board, and make money on. I don't know whether that happens there. It does. Oh,
yeah. The interesting thing. The interesting thing here is, once people understand that That's how they control you, by your power, what you use. Once you start taking away from all these things, you don't need that government anymore, because civilized people know how to act with one another in a society without somebody telling them what to do. You know, we don't need a mayor in a town. We don't need all this other stuff. If people need something in their local communities, they get together and they do it. Yeah. You know, and, you know, the federal government here in the United States was only supposed to do international trade and trade amongst the states. Now they got their fingers in everything. So people are trying to break away from that during this time period in our history right now. All countries are. They're trying to go back to, you know, where the people run things instead of governments telling us what we have to do and what's good and what's bad for us.
Mm-hmm.
No,
That's a good idea as well.
Getting back to all of this from a shamanic perspective and a spiritual perspective, you know, you mentioned before there are big changes coming. And I've heard that from a lot of different people, different areas. People have different ideas on what those changes could mean. We are in a time of great upheaval right now. Things are happening. What, in your opinion, or in your knowledge and experience that you've been learning, is going to be part of these changes that are coming for the Earth? What can we look forward to in our future?
Boy, I just put my book out called The Earth Time Chronicles. If you really want to know what I think, go to Amazon and get that under William Whitecrow, The Earth Time Chronicles. It used to be really technical, and I read it one day with about 5 other people. It was just too technical, so I had to rewrite it and put it where the average person can understand it. And I talk a lot about there. Our environmental changes are going to keep changing. Better get used to that. Our planetary magnetic field is weakening by 5% every decade. Need to think about that. It's already 20-25% deteriorated. The North Atlantic current and everything is slowing down. It's already slowed down by 20%. We're heating, more ocean acidification. We have a lot of things that are going to happen to our planet we're going to have to adapt to, because we can't fix them right fast. Some things you just can't fix. The CO2 cycle, just for the CO2 to go through the ocean and come back out, you know, and be scrubbed for our atmosphere, you know, out of our atmosphere so we get fresh air and everything, takes up to 50 years to do. We know now that our oceans are not producing the same amount of oxygen that they used to, because of the damage, because of warming and because of acidification of the oceans. We also know that our land ability to produce our oxygen has diminished quite significantly too. In a period of a 10-year period of time from 1994, 1994 to the year 2000, we lost 0.20% of oxygen in our atmosphere. So we got a weakening magnetic field. And you do the math, figure it's 20% gone right now. Every decade, you're going to lose another 5%. It's weakening more and more and more. It's actually weakest over the entire north continent of the United States right now than anywhere else on the planet. You know, the things that are happening there, like you were talking, Mark, the fossil fuels and things like this are just putting more CO2 and more CO2. Now the problem here is we've created loops. We have a CO2 loop and we have a methane loop. The CO2 has heated up everything to a point where volcanic eruption, whatever you want to call it, doesn't matter. This is the fact is, this is happening. Now we're having massive methane releases in Siberia on the land, and methane hydrates in the ocean. So you can see where things are going atmospherically. So if we get enough people where we can stop and do what we're talking about here, look at what we need to do, start going off of the main grid, stop using coal, stop using the fossil fuels, things like this. 80 years from now in the future, people have a chance. Where it is right now, even if we stop using every single thing we're doing right now, we got 80 years of increase and everything going to happen. Unfortunately, because of the massive methane releases right now, we're going to have to build our homes different. Our walls are going to have to be thicker because of radiation weakening magnetic fields. We're not talking about a death blow here. We're talking about definitely a drop in population, but we're going to have to look at living in the future like we already live in the future now. Use the technologies that are beneficial, nothing polluting, better homes. We're not going to be able to construct these wood homes and everything we have in the future. We need to make them strong so they can withstand hurricanes, withstand electromagnetic storms, diverse weather patterns that we're going to have. So there. But humanity has a good chance. There is light at the end of the tunnel, because we're going to have to use our I call it old-fashioned ways, and what I mean by that is the shamanic attitude of, you know, don't screw anything up. Try to help everything be better, rebalance ourselves, our societies, everything, and modern technology. So a fine blend of old-fashioned ways and modern technology is going to get us through this. But our planet's going to change. There's nothing we can do about that right now, even if we stop. So we got to look at construction, society, and everything. Big cities, no more fossil fuels inside, all electric or alternative energies within our cities. That's where most people live. They're heat islands. They're massive producers. No more coal power plants. We do have to realize that in order for us to survive, we have to step into the class 1 or 2 civilization status, or we're not going to make it. And in the long run, we already have the 6th great extinction happening right now, and we can be on that list depending on what we do. And that's not trying to scare people. That's just a stone cold fact where we're at.
Yep. I mean, a lot of when you mention the oxygen depletion, it doesn't help that, especially with all the rainforests in the Central and South America being cut down for industry going back the last 20, 30 years. I'm sure that's had a great impact.
That's right.
All the deforestation.
Amazon's gone. A third of the Amazon's gone right now. And let me tell you one other thing, folks. This is a scientific proven fact right here, and plus the natives are telling this as well. The plants now, they use CO2 and they use oxygen. When it gets to, they release a lot of oxygen into the planet. We all know that. That's where we get a lot of our stuff. But when the temperature and humidity get to a certain point, they quit using the CO2 to live on, and they start using oxygen, and that starts releasing more CO2. That's where all the jungles on our planet are at right now, starting to release more CO2 and using oxygen. So now we're all in competition for the air.
Have you heard of the Shaman frequency, Shaman resonance?
Yes, I have.
Okay. There is, actually it was brought up to, during one of my shamanic classes, the instructor who was talking about it, he keeps a close watch on this. And with the Shaman frequency is the Earth's natural magnetic field, and how in the last few years, ever since they've measured it, it always kept at a standard steady rate of about 7 hertz, and yet for the last several years it's been continuously rising, and it spiked up into the 40s and 50s, and I think at one point it even hit 72 earlier this summer hertz for the Earth's magnetic field. Now, that in itself is going to cause a lot of changes because the human brain functions at that 7 hertz as well. And now that we're operating at 40, 50, 60, whatever hertz, the frequencies, it might be kind of an explanation why everybody seems to be so batshit crazy these days. But it's also I've heard a lot of talk about, and this is kind of a new agey thing, but and I try to stay away from new agey or hairy-fairy, but a lot of people talked about the Earth is getting ready to advance up to a new frequency, rise up a new higher vibration. I mean, what are your thoughts on that?
Sure, the Earth can do it, but that doesn't necessarily mean humanity's going to do it. And that's the key. The planet's going to do what it's going to do. A wolf doesn't know why it's a wolf. A bear doesn't know why it's a bear. The planet is a planet. It is what it is, and it's going to change and adapt to however and try to rebalance itself according to what's going on. Humans, on the other hand, are, as you say, pretty fickle, in a lot of ways. We don't pay attention to the cycles and the frequencies and things that are going on around there. The planet can take a step up energy-wise, but it does not guarantee that the whole population and all society is going to do the thing. That's a pipe dream. We want that to happen, but the fact is that isn't going to happen that way. Everybody wants to. I like what you said about the new agey thing. Really, the new agey thing is just trying to discover all the things of the past, why they worked, how they worked, and how to rebalance ourselves. So when people are talking new age, you're just really trying to describe things that's always been around. They're just trying to put a new label on it.
Or they're trying to put it to ultra mystical properties. And
you can't do that.
Yeah, Irene, what do you think about Hairy Fairy? Irene?
Sorry, I couldn't find my mute button. Hairy Fairy out the window.
Yeah, she's always complaining to me about that.
I'm basic, down to earth. That's me.
Yes.
I learned the old ways, and that's where I'm sticking. I can't stand all this Hairy Fairy crap that's coming about now.
I like what Mark said, and we're talking about the Hairy Fairy thing and everything. Really, the more try to complicate and give it new names and everything, the harder it is for people to attain that state of being.
Do you know?
Because they're trying to attain a state of being. Go ahead. I'm sorry. Go ahead.
William, I was the
please.
one that came up with Hairy Fairy.
Oh,
And it's caught on
That's pretty good.
everywhere. It's caught on
yeah,
everywhere.
no doubt.
I labeled
Yeah,
it
that's
that.
a good. I like it.
Yeah,
But the
I
fact
labeled
of the matter is,
about
people
40
have to
years
understand.
ago. Sorry.
40. Wow, no, that's a long time.
Yeah.
This is the first time I've heard it, so America's got to catch up.
No. It's used all
Well,
over the place now, but I first started calling it Hairy Fairy about 40 years ago. All these new ideas people were coming out with, you know.
Crazy. It's really disinformation. It's taking people and making it harder for them to turn around and learn what balance and how to balance themselves and what, because everybody's looking, when they come to me for training or help or anything like that, the first thing they look, oh, you're a shaman and everything. I said, look at here, number one, come out with me and spend a day with me. You're going to understand that I am no different than you. I work hard every single day, and I put my pants on one leg at a time. The only difference between me and you is I've had near-death experiences. I've searched for higher meanings in my life, and I attained that.
Mm-hmm.
So now I can interact with all these other energies and spirits and things in our life because I recognize them. I understand what they do. Therefore, I can interact with them. But when people start putting themselves on pedestals and trying to make people think, oh, you're going to do this special way or that special way, I go right back to the original saying. There are many trails that lead to the top of the mountain. Find one that suits you and take it.
Yeah. Yeah, well, I agree totally with you. You're very, very much like me in a lot of ways, a hell of a lot of ways. And, well, I suppose really, with all my learning and everything over, oh God, and I'm older than you. By the way, I am.
That's okay. I don't believe in age, so that's okay.
Yeah. Well, with my learning over all these, years, I suppose you could call me a female shaman. But I don't like labels. I will not be labelled as anything.
Nope.
It's bad enough being labelled as a grandmother sometimes. You know, but I will not be labelled, will I, Mark?
No, you're adamant about that. In fact, it's when we try
the key.
When we try to promote.
Sorry, I was just going to say the key thing here is this: if you're in a spiritual search, find what works for you and use it.
Yeah.
If you're in a search for the truth, find the direction that seems less traveled, meaning Occam's razor. When things can't be proven by all other means, the truth is there using Occam's razor. It means that no matter how fantastic it seems, it obviously has to be the truth. That's the same thing. Why are they getting rid of NASA and not funding it? Because why do they need it? They already got other programs going on doing what they want. So they don't need NASA. Just
yeah, it saves more money for more Black Ops programs.
Mm-hmm.
That's right.
Yep.
That's right.
What were you going to say, Mark?
Oh, now you made me lose my train of thought. Shame on you.
Oh.
Okay.
Well, that's not hard, is it?
Now, William, we've got about 10 minutes left in the program here. What are you mostly working on these days? Do you do any? I know you're really big with your radio show. You're writing some more books. What are your kind of goals for the future with the work that you're doing?
Oh man, I think I'm writing a book called The Shaman. It's not called The Shaman, but it's on my experience in my life as a shaman, and trying to open doors and where people can understand really what's going on. I was trained the old ways, so I don't go take a lot of things and this and that. I spent my youth and all this training and learning. So I'm going to do my thing. My main thing right now is to help people understand how to balance themselves, understand really truthfully what's happening, with the government, with these programs and everything. Also, us spiritually, what's happening with our planet. All these things everybody has to understand, and you can see the whole picture. That's the key. That's why I wrote my book, The Earth Time Chronicles, so people can really see the whole picture in a book and go, wow, this makes sense, and they don't have to go guess on 50 different shows or whatever and go to YouTube, all this. They can read one thing and then they can go research it themselves, and then they're going to find out that everything in that book is proven not only scientifically, spiritually, and every other way. So it's fact, and it can help people. Instead of looking at the gloom and doom, I try to show a light at the end of the tunnel. We have a lot of doom and gloom going around out there right now. The key is for people to understand how to balance themselves and everything is to see the positive aspects of everything that's going on. So even the challenges we have are learning experiences. Everything we're going through is a learning experience, and it's teaching us what not to do and what to do. So we have to pay more attention to that. That's what I'm trying to get through with my radio show, attacking every different angle of where our lives are, our perceptions, who we are, trying to help people find that shaman aspect within their own lives, within themselves, and grow that. So the next generation, this is the key. We got to work now so this next generation will understand that they need that balance that a lot of people are looking for now. And I think they have a better chance of making it because their world that they're coming into is going to be a lot more diverse and changed than the one we're living in right now. So I think that's my whole thing is to train other shamans, throw on the table exactly where we're at right now, not to scare people, but to make them wake up and realize what's going on so they can make changes for their future generations on there. Myself, I'm just going deeper and deeper and deeper into the spirit and the world, and I still have my contacts within the organizations, within the programs. They're telling me what's going on, and I'll tell you what I'm doing in life right now. I'm preparing myself for some events that are going to be coming here, food-wise, medical. It's all good to be prepared. Everybody should do it. It's what our grandparents did. And I'm living a life as close to the planet as I can and just teaching, doing the shows and bringing guests on and doing shows like your guys right here, which I appreciate you having me on and everything, to tell people that it isn't as crazy out there as a lot of people think. It's the system that wants you to think that,
Yeah.
So we do have to work better. We have to work better to communicate with one another as people and not governments. And I think we'll be okay.
I absolutely agree with that, 100%. There's so much about that appeals to me now that I'm getting older in life, simplifying more, going back to the earth. I've been pulling away from mainstream society for a while now. And since I started walking the shamanic path, and again, when I say that, I don't want people to thinking I'm going out there calling myself a shaman. I'm not. Absolutely not, and I won't use that.
I don't
term.
even do that.
Well, you know what? What I'll do is I say I'm a shamanic practitioner, and when I do my work, I don't take credit for it. It's not coming through me. I'm the hollow vessel. I let spirit or whatever the forces are working through me to do it, but I keep my ego in check because
Mark, the key is you let things flow. Other people try to push it.
Mm-hmm.
When you try to push something, it's not going to happen. When you let it flow and open your life and your heart and your mind and use your intuition, temper everything with a little logic, then you start seeing and understand the reality of what's life and what's going on. And that's when we get to the point where you're at.
There are a few people who have made a name for themselves over the years talking about with shamanism. I think probably the most famous was with Carlos Castaneda coming out in the 70s with his books. And a lot of his approach to it was the what was he, Yaqui Indian, the Don Juan, or I know Don Juan was really a collection of several different shamans he worked with, but and they used a lot of the peyote in their ceremonies, but he seemed to have a slightly different approach to it. I never read a lot of the books. I read, I think, one or two of them, and I had trouble getting into them myself. But later in life, a lot of the training I've been doing was under tutelage from students from Sandra Ingersoll. I don't know if you've ever heard of her. And, it's just, for me, it's just a very peaceful, loving way of approaching life. And trying to remove negativity, and it's not woo-woo or hairy-fairy or anything like that. It's dealing with very real forces and energies that are around us all the time. We just haven't understood it in a while because we've kind of had it programmed out of us by modern Western society. That's why I think it's really important to look at the indigenous societies, the Aborigines in Australia, which is probably one of the oldest cultures on the planet. In South America, the shamans down there, in Tibet, all around the world, they have so much that I think that to teach us on how to interact not only with the earth, but beyond the earth, the other forces and energies, intelligences all around us?
Sure. You know, another thing, Mark, we're talking about here is two different aspects of shamanism here, too. You have the modern shaman, you know, and everything like this. I'm the old type. You know, the one thing that I have to tell people, I love the primal experiences that I had when these elders and other medicine people were taking me through the ceremonies and everything. It taught me a deeper level, and I've used the peyote and the ayahuasca. I've done it all in my lifetime. I don't need it now because I understand where I'm at, and because of other things like my near-death experiences, my ET thing, I'm well-rounded. I just know what's happening. It isn't assuming anything. The old shamans of old days had to go through these primal experiences, even to the point of death, and then you came back, and this is where you had your understandings, you know, your vision quests and things of this nature. They don't do that anymore. You know, very few. I mean, some shamans do, but when you find an older shaman and everything, you're going to have to go through all those ceremonies and years of training, and your perspective becomes solidified, and you understand at such a freaking deep level. It's unbelievable. And these modern shamans don't get to go through those primal. They may say they do, and they may say they're going to reach a near-death experience and this and that where they can understand that, but in reality, you have to go through these older understandings and test yourself. My aspect of shaman, I wanted to go through all the old ways, and then when I went through all the old ways and understand that and become who I am now, these new ways and everything I see right through. I understand what they're saying. They just give different labels to things that we've known for thousands of years already. And sometimes it's confusing. Not to me, but other people.
Well, we've reached actually the end of the show here. So, William, tell people where they can hear your radio show.
You can get, I would like you, Mark, now. In the beginning.
Rented lips.
You go to, yeah, exactly. I got to undo my zipper here on my lip. I can talk better. But anyway, every Sunday from 8 to 9 p.m. Pacific Standard Time on TFR.com. Just go to TFR.com and hit the Listen Live button every Sunday from 8 o'clock to 9 o'clock, and it's Quantum Quest Radio. And it's my wife and me. Sometimes we have a guest on. And also you can contact me at williamwhitecrow@yahoo.com. I'm also on Facebook. I'm on Twitter. I'm on LinkedIn. And I have williamwhitecrow.com, my own personal website, if you need to contact me too. But yeah, that's about my basic information. If you want any of my books, just type in William Whitecrow on Amazon, and I have the two books, The Healing, which is the second book in the series. The first one is Are You Tired of Living the Toxic Life? If you're having a hard time, get those two books. They're going to help you tremendously. And the third one's on its way out. It's called Success. And another one, I wrote a kid's book. It's a moral story. And kids, it's good for family to sit down and read. I believe together. That's why this book I wrote for my grandkids. It's called The Wolf and Bow Friar. It's on Amazon too, and it's a kid's book. And it talks about telling the truth and staying on top of things. And my last one was the Earth Time Chronicles, which is, we've talked about it, what's happening with society, the Earth, and what we can do about it. So that's the one I think you're really going to want to read. It's very important. Tells you what we can do, not what we can't do.
Well, William, I got to say, this has been a totally fascinating conversation tonight, an interview, and just want to thank you so much for coming on the show and sharing your experiences. This has been great, and we'd love to have you back sometime.
You betcha, anytime. It's been a pleasure. It's been a pleasure.
Yeah, that would be good. And Mark, where can you find us?
Well, you can find us everywhere these days. Where can't you find us? Really? Let's no.
We hit every time zone across the world.
Yep. Where you hear our shows live every Wednesday night from 10 to midnight, both in the Greenwich Mean in the UK and in the East Coast of the US, where we stream on TalkStream Live. TalkStream Live, TuneIn Radio, the new
iVox, Planet FM.
Good Lord. Paranormal Radio app from TalkStream.
Also, eventually on the YouTube channel, which is my department there, William, and all our shows eventually get up onto that. So you'll be on there as well.
Yeah.
There you go. I also have a YouTube channel too, just to let you know. You can check out things that I'm doing. I'm doing a lot of new projects on YouTube as well.
Oh, that'd be interesting.
Well, that's
Love
the
it.
end of the show. Andy, do you want to take us out?
Indeed, it has been an absolutely fascinating evening. I'm sorry, William, I went quite quiet for a while. I was just listening to all the things you were talking about there. But it's been an excellent evening. Really have enjoyed listening to you and listening to the questions Mark's been putting to you. So I hope everyone's enjoyed the show, and we will be back, of course, at the same time next week. And that's it for now. Goodbye, everyone.
Bye-bye.
Have a good evening, everyone.